Good afternoon, everybody. Please find the chat function and say hello and let me know you're here. I'd like to give you a few minutes just in case you're making a drink. Yeah, got one person in for that. Just so you know, Alan, if you hear that noise, that's people chatting and sending messages or questions.
Okay.
We have the poll open as usual. Find out if you're a member or not. If you could answer that poll if possible. Ooh. I hope we're all excited about legal admissibility. So I'm currently sat as I am looking because it's really hot in London right now. It's one of those things is that I just could not bear to put a shirt on. So I will be turning my camera off whilst Alan is talking. Alan doesn't have a camera, and so we don't get to see his lovely face today, but I will be handing over to him very shortly. I am standing in for Ramjita, the North Group Chair, as she's unable to make it today, and I just happen to be free. So apologies that it's me you've got to look at rather than Iran. But in any case, is that I really like legal admissibility. It's one of the things that I enjoy talking to people about. Maybe that's just because I'm fundamentally a sad person, but what you going to do? In terms of IRMS events, is that we are constantly putting these on, and they are free to non-members for the time being. So yeah, please do spread the word about how awesome IRMS has been during COVID-19 times. And pretty much that's what I'm going to say, is that I do have my own webinar tonight at 6:30 with Adele Redhead. So if you're interested in joining me tonight, that would be great. The registration is still open. But otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to Alan. Thanks very much, Alan. Over to you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, and thank you for the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're in that part of the world, because I guess we're not specifically limited to the UK. But anyway, here we go. Legal admissibility and the British Standard 10,008. In terms of what we're going to talk about today, and now my screen has frozen, which we had on the testing of this. Seemed to resolve itself. Question is, how did I resolve it? Here we go. We're not having much luck with the technology.
If you unshare your screen and reshare it, Alan.
All right, I've worked it out.
Oh, it worked.
I've worked it out. I've been in IT for 40 odd years. I can work it out.
Yeah, turn it off, turn it back on again. That's how it works, right?
Yeah, big red button. Always the answer. Okay, so what am I going to talk about? And I guess we may well have two different types of people. Those that have never heard of BS 10,008, which I'm surprised at, since we've been going for the last 25 years, I think. But I'll talk very quickly about what it's about and what it's for. We have a new version published at the end of May. I will talk about what is new in that particular version. It's the 6th version of this topic. And then I will talk about what are the advantages of you using it. What are the compliance benefits? So that's the plan. Hopefully the presentation will take around half an hour, allowing plenty of time for all the questions I'm sure you've got. But if there's a burning question, then I believe Emily is going to interrupt me, which I'm again very happy with. So, what is evidential weight and legal admissibility all about? And for those people that are unfamiliar with those two terms, everybody talks about legal admissibility. And in fact, at the very early part of this project, legal admissibility was the main title of our document. And legal admissibility is really about, can we use our evidence, our documentary evidence, in a dispute resolution process, i.e. in a court? Will the courts accept our electronic evidence, whether it's a copy or whether it's the original electronic file? And briefly, the answer to that question is yes. In terms of UK courts, anything submitted to the court, whatever type of evidence it is, can only actually be rejected by the judge. And obviously they very rarely do that. So the question of, is my electronic information legally admissible? 99.999%, yes, it is, whatever you do. The real question is the evidential weight question. Fine, we have some electronic information that we've submitted. Can the courts trust it? Do they believe it? Is it what it says it is? Are you able to prove that the words, pictures, sound, whatever in that electronic document is actually what it says it is? Is it authentic? Is it complete? Do we know we have found everything that is relevant? So to me, evidential weight, the weight of the evidence in that dispute, is the most important topic. As I've said, legal admissibility is not an issue. Evidential weight is where the real issue is. So this is the original reason why what is now BS 10008 was developed. And so what are the objectives of the British Standard? What is it trying to do? And as I've said, it's been going for quite a long time, 25 odd years. And so we've built up a lot of advice, a lot of recommendations on how to improve evidential weight. How do we improve the reliability of our electronic storage? How do we maximize evidential weight so that we are very confident that if we get a challenge, oh, that word in that document wasn't the word I got, that sort of question, how can you go about demonstrating that it is true, trustworthy, reliable, etc.? Also, when we're dealing with other organizations, we're sending them information. How can we demonstrate to them that the information is appropriate, is accurate, provide confidence in dealing with other organizations? And similarly with external inspectors, people that come in and audit our businesses. We're showing them information, we're showing them our electronically stored information, and if they ask the question, how do you know that is true? How do you know that is trustworthy? And one of the answers that you can do is, well, we follow good practice advice. We've taken the British Standard in this area and we've applied it. And in some instances, we've had external people in to check that we are actually applying it correctly. So those are really the objectives of 10008. So that's good. Let's carry on. There's the history Yes, we actually started work on this project in 1993. Those people that know me will know that at that particular time I had hair. I know you can't see my picture, but I have less at the moment. But yeah, we started it then.
You had hair.
Thank you, Emily. I thought you said you'd stay quiet. But anyway.
Can't help myself.
We actually had a lot of people involved back in the mid-90s. A lot of legal firms, a lot of businesses, a lot of auditors, etc., that put together what was the original version in 1996, where it was published as a British Standard published document, what PD stands for, as a code of practice. And there were many references to it. For example, the old FOI Act, the Section 46 code, recommended that if you were storing information electronically, it was a good idea to follow it. So what do we have now? As I mentioned earlier, we've just published, or BSI has just published, the 6th version of this. We now have a specification, which is 10,008 Part 1. We have a code of practice, which is 10,008 Part 2, and that combines all of the advice from all of the previous documents into the one document. So you could just take the specification that says you shall do this, you shall do this, and go ahead and do them. If you want advice on how to do them, then Part 2 gives you that advice. And all the chapters have the same headings, so they directly relate. A new development for BSI, what used to be called the workbook, is now called a compliance checklist. This takes all of the requirements in the specification and turns them into questions. So if Part 1 says you shall do it, then the checklist says, have you done it? And where is your evidence that you've done it?
Alan?
Yes?
Quick question on that in terms of the compliance checklist. Has the content particularly changed from what once was the workbook, or is it just a change of name?
No, it's been revised to match 10,008 Part 1 as it is now. There's not a lot of changes in Part 1, to be honest. Just a few additions. Some of the section numbers have changed. A lot of the questions are the same, but there are obviously some slight differences and there are some new questions. So no, you can't use the old workbook with the new specification.
Oh, I've got to spend more money.
Well, the good news is that the checklist is now available as a PDF that you can fill in and store your new version on your system. You don't have to go back to paper versions for the checklist. It's now been published as a fillable PDF. That may make it easier. I think it's something new for BSI to do fillable PDFs. It looks okay in all the testing we did, but no doubt when it gets into Emily's hands, she'll have loads of problems, knowing Emily. But moving on quickly.
Rude.
Okay, so in terms of the work I've been doing, the main use, and in fact the original use for 10,008 is related to document scanning. And many people ask the question, if we have scanned a load of paper and we are happy that we have good images, can we get rid of the paper? Because there are financial advantages in not having to store all of that paper. And my answer is always the same, and that is to say, firstly, how can you demonstrate that the images are actually true copies of the original? And this includes questions like, how do you demonstrate that you have an image of every piece of paper? You haven't missed one in your scanning process? Have you captured the information content? For example, was there color information on a particular document and you've captured it in black and white? Did that matter? Or was color important? So the question is, have you produced a true copy? And has all the information in that true copy been captured? And obviously what 10,008 does is give you processes, procedures in order to enable you to demonstrate that. And if you've done that, if you feel that yes, you can demonstrate that, then the question is, can we destroy all the original documents? To which I answer, probably, but are there some original documents that you may still need to retain? As somebody said to me, oh, I've just scanned the Magna Carta. I've got some good images. Can I destroy the original? Probably not a good idea, because the original has particular value. But, and if you look at one of the probably the most active application of 10,008 at the moment in the health sector, a large number of NHS trusts are now scanning all their patient records, producing electronic records, producing electronic images from the paper. So are those trusts happy to destroy the original documents? A lot of them are actually doing it, but they've all said, are there some that we need to retain? And it's actually quite difficult to scan an X-ray, for example, and get a good picture. So the answer to that is no, we keep those. Are there some documents that we need to retain? But in practice, and it is a risk, that is true, but in practice, many NHS trusts are actually going ahead and destroying the original document because they see advantages in not having to store the paper, not having to manage the paper. And perhaps a question that people don't think about, well, if we have our electronic images and we have not destroyed the paper, then the paper is still the original. The paper is still the best evidence as far as the courts are concerned. And hence, if you've submitted electronic copies, the courts could ask, do you have the original? And if you cannot demonstrate that you have destroyed the original, then the courts can ask, well, please, can we see the original? And I guess you can imagine if you can't find the original, then you may have some problems with that evidence. Another example of not being able to destroy original documents is if there happens to be some litigation in place or some litigation anticipated, because destroying original documents under those circumstances is destruction of evidence, which could lead you to contempt of court charges. So there are questions around, can we destroy every original document? Possibly not, but the majority, I'm sure you will be able to.
One thing I wanted to just add in there for people is that when a lawyer is given a contempt of court, it actually stays on their record forevermore. So it's quite important in relation to legal and lawyers that the information that they're using as evidence, if it's not done right, and it's done, and it could be a contempt of court, is that could strike them off.
Indeed. Indeed, that is absolutely true. Okay, so that's what 10,008 is mainly used for. However, it can be used, and I have seen it used in a number of examples, for managing general electronic storage, your Word documents, your spreadsheets, your PDFs, whatever, information in databases. How do you demonstrate that the information in the database is true and authentic and hasn't been changed? Capture of information from mobile devices. We see mobile devices being used more and more. How, if information is captured on those devices, how do you demonstrate that it's actually now stored on your main systems appropriately? If you use third parties to do things for you, how do you make sure that those third parties do what you wish to do? And also covered is the electronic transfer of information between organizations. If you're sharing information, how do you go about doing that? So those topics are also covered in 10,008. And I guess what is now new in this new version? And I guess the first thing to say is that no advice that was in the previous version, no requirements that are in that previous version have been removed. All we've actually done is extended the scope of the document to different areas. I hear lots of questions coming through, so I'll look forward to seeing those in due course.
Yeah, so Alan, if I could interrupt.
Yeah, please do.
Someone has said, where I work, we have a lot of model release forms for the use of photographs. Our photographic manager insists that the original form cannot be destroyed after it's been scanned because we need to keep the original signature. Any comments on regarding this? Thanks.
So, yep, I've seen this type of question many times. I've seen no requirements to retain original signatures in any legal requirements. I know that's a very general statement. What you are actually demonstrating is that that person did sign it. I have seen instances of people actually retaining original documents because they needed to check the original document for a fingerprint, because the person who signed it said, I didn't sign that, but they found his fingerprint on it. But those are really rare cases. What you're actually trying to do is to say, yes, there is the signature. You don't do, why do you need to retain the original signature? Are you going to check for the type of ink? Are you going to check for the type of paper? Or are you just looking for it? So that's my response to that.
The other thing that someone said is that I seem to recall at conference an ICSA, so the Independent Inquiry into Child Sex Abuse rep, did say that we could destroy paper copies if scanned. My comments on that is that ICSA are not scanning to illegal admissibility, they're simply taking a copy, and in any case they're not giving you a copy of that scanned image back. But what are your thoughts, Alan?
So all standards are actually voluntary. There's nothing to say that if you do not comply with 10,008, your images will not be legally admissible. That is definitely not the case. As I said at the beginning, what 10,008 is all about is for you to have confidence in your own processes, such that if there is a challenge, you have all the evidence to demonstrate that you did it well. So there is nothing written in law that says 10,008 or it's not legally admissible. That's not true. You can do what you like. This is just adding confidence, you're reducing the risk, if you like. It's a risk assessment process.
Yeah, so when we talk about evidential weight, things that kind of come up is that where you see people taking a picture of a physical document, like a picture with your camera phone.
Sure.
And then they scan that in, and then someone then screenshots it and then sends it back through WhatsApp, and then WhatsApp is printed out, and then it's scanned back in. The evidential weight gets less and less on the basis of how good quality is the image. So in essence, there is no evidential weight behind a screenshotted photo, printed, screenshotted again, pictured photo, if that makes sense. Yep. So you may not be able to read all the information, you may not be able to see the pictures, etc. And you're right, there is, to be honest, there is some evidential weight there, but I could challenge that very easily. Mm-hmm. How do you know that that went from there? In fact, do you know actually the route it took to get? How did you produce that image? The other thing that people kind of get messed up is that it's not about legal admissibility of your organization. It's about a process. So one process of using a flatbed scanner, it goes onto the G drive, and then the G drive is then it's dropped into the adult's case file. That's one process that needs to be legally admissible. There, and you have to provide all your evidence behind that with the compliance checklist.
Yeah.
And if you're using a MFD, multifunctional device, to scan it straight into the adult casework, that's another process that needs to be legally admissible. Every time you change a physical situation with the process, you need to I won't say recompliant yourself, you need to go back through the processes to make sure that it's all covered. Just because you have a certificate in legal admissibility doesn't mean everything everyone does is legally admissible / evidential weighted.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Who's been teaching you, Emily?
Funny enough, I think it's a guy called Alan Shipman.
You're doing good so far. You haven't passed yet, though.
Young Padawan. That's what it feels like right now, isn't it? Yes, Yoda.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, happy for me to go on to the what's new.
Yep.
Okay, so what have we added into the 2020 version that was not in previous versions? And you may have heard about blockchain, the wonderful new way of managing data. There are significant challenges from a legal admissibility point of view using that technology. So we've added a section in there. People will be familiar, if you're in a government department, with the security marking of documents. There is a British standard, BS 10,010, which talks about that in detail. We've put some information in 10,008 about document marking systems and Internet of Things systems. Information is whirring around those systems. So what is necessary to maximize the evidential weight of information in those systems? We've improved the guidance on capture of information from mobile devices, and we've added technology such as CCTV, traffic cameras, all manner of different mobile devices.
Is body cams in that?
Yep. It's a mobile device. If you are capturing information on those devices and then transferring them onto main storage systems, how do you manage that transfer? How do you know? Just to take an example, and by the way, if you want more information on any of these what new topics, if you take the slide pack after this event, there are 3 hidden slides in there giving you more information about these particular things. I didn't think there were time to go through everything in detail, but obviously happy to answer questions.
The slides will be available on IRMS North, I nearly said London then, no, IRMS North page after the so.
Great. I mean, for example, just one of the topics in there, can you trust the date and time on a mobile device? Can somebody take their smart phone, turn the date back, turn the time back, take a picture, and so that picture is shown to have been taken in the past? Is that possible? How do you know that hasn't happened? How do you manage the date and time and location of a mobile device?
See, this is where I think about internet connected devices, is where I absolutely hate IoT. And it's just one of those things that if it's not internet connected, it's not necessarily connected to a clock of any kind. So like my phone, I can't change the date and time on it unless I go into a different country. But my car clock, I can change really easily. You know, who has an oven clock that doesn't change? And so you spend about 6 months of the year wondering if it's the right time or not.
Have you tried changing the date and time on your mobile phone?
To be honest, it's not something I'm really for.
Just try it. Do try it sometime.
I'll do it now.
No, you're supposed to be listening to this webinar now.
So,
okay. So we've looked at scanning and we've gone through all the advice in there and updated it to make it more modern. But again, we've not changed any of the fundamentals related to scanning. We've had a look at the risk management sections.
Oh my God, I can change it.
Yeah, can you? Surprised that, isn't it?
Sorry, carry on.
Come on, listen. And those of you that are records managers will be familiar with ISO 15489. We've made sure that what we've got in 10,008 links in with the latest version of the records management international standard. So that is what is new in the 2020 versions.
I have some more questions for you, Alan.
Okay.
Sorry if already asked, but can you use DocuSign to signatures to sign documents, and will this be accepted for legal admissibility?
Yes. Is that too short an answer?
Yes. Okay.
Again.
And then the next one is.
Well, hang on. Before you go on that one, what is things like DocuSign doing? Are they saying, yes, this person signed this document, so that person saw it? Or is it being used for, is this to say that my organization is approving this, I don't know, contract or something? What is the signature for? And can you demonstrate, as part of your process, that only the person that was allowed to sign it, or the people that were allowed to sign it, did they actually sign it? That is the question, which is exactly the same as the question for a handwritten signature. One of the challenges with electronic signatures, digital signatures, is the long-term issue. If you have to keep a document for, I don't know, 50 years with a DocuSign signature on it, will you in 50 years be able to demonstrate that, yep, there's the signature? How does the thing work down the line? And that's another question that you need to ask. So that's my answer on signatures. Do carry on.
Okay. And the other question was, how much are the new workbooks? Is there much difference to the old ones, as we have the old versions might or may not be willing to purchase new copies if the main principles are unchanged?
So the answer is it is different. We made some modifications to what is now part 1, the specification, and the workbook, or now the checklist, mirrors that that checklist. So yeah, most of the original questions are still there. I'm not sure whether I could say all the original questions are there. I suspect they are, but I've not done that double check. They may be slightly different editorially. They may have different paragraph numbers, section numbers, etc. And there are some new questions. So in truth, you ought to take the new checklist. But what I can say, depending upon what the scope of your system is, for example, if you are just a pure scanning scope, then nothing has changed from the previous version, and hence you could still go ahead and comply with the previous version. So sorry, yeah, there are some changes, and of course you can now do it electronically and store it electronically rather than have to go through all those paper signatures, etc. But of course it could well be just a one-off purchase that you can use until we get to, I guess, 2024 when we do the next version, if I'm still happy to do that. That's another story. Okay.
Thanks very much.
So on with the slide deck, and people ask me, oh, there's an awful lot of stuff to do. This is a big document. Do I really have to do it? And the answer being, well, if you're doing things properly, then you should be doing it all anyway. What the standard is really doing is saying, are you missing something? So, for example, your policy for how you manage electronic information. Does that policy allow you to scan paper and destroy the paper? So you need the appropriate policy statement, and there is a sample in the standard as to how you should do that. You need to have your procedures written down. We're talking about storing electronic information for many, many years in a lot of cases. And so how do you remember how you captured that information? How do you know how you managed it over the years? Have you written down your procedures?
One of the ways that I kind of tell people to do this is to either set up a ring binder or set up a folder online and take copies of all of your policies and put them into the section and name them up as evidence, so that when you go through your compliance checklist, you provide an evidence number, and that goes back to a policy which is in that folder. That way is that you've got everything in one area should anyone question it.
Yeah, great. A lot of organisations now have, large organisations have standardised policy management systems.
Yeah.
The organisation have lots of different policies, and so how do they manage all of them, and how do they make sure they all interrelate? They pull them all together in one order. But I agree, having a centralised store related to this is great. Do we know who's responsible for what? Who's responsible for compliance with the standard, etc., etc.? and the long-term support of compliance, and hence the long-term support of the electronically stored information that you have. So that is the process that we recommend. The last slide is coming up, which says that the 10,008 helps you demonstrate that your electronically stored information is authentic. You can trust it, you know what's happened to it, and you can audit all of the different processes. And so it supports the that critical evidential weight. And so it enables organisations to trust its electronic information. And I think people are realising that information is quite important to an organisation. You need to be able to trust it. You need to be able to maximise its benefits. It's actually less expensive if you can trust things, because you're never then having to scuttle around and find out what happened to something. So hopefully I've gone through what it's for, what's new, and what are the benefits. And so I think I can go on to my any questions slide.
So I put some polls out, Alan, to do with like legal admissibility, and one of them that I asked was, have you implemented previous 10,008 in your organisation? We had my answers were yes all, yes partly, no too difficult, no but trying, and not planning to, just want to know an update. We had 2 people that said yes partly, 1 that said no it's too difficult, 2 that said no but trying, and 9 that said not planning to, just wanted to know an update. Which I thought was quite interesting, is that for the most part is that you rarely come across an organisation that has got, I mean, do you know of any organisation that is all done legal admissible? They're scanning and destroying absolutely everything.
I actually know of one organisation that is actually a service provider, and they provide services to many different organisations in the finance industry, and all the documents that they have and handle actually belong to those finance companies. And so they actually have arrangements with all of those that says once we've scanned it and we've done the work on it, we destroy the paper. But I guess that's an unusual situation.
Yeah. Another thing that I asked was, will you be buying the new updated workbooks and compliance checklist? 3 people said yes, 6 people said no. Okay. Which I thought was interesting as to sort of where we're going with this, is that sure. Are people interested in it? Sure. Question from the audience that said, do we have any formal timeline to incorporate / update internal procedures with what's new in 10,008?
The answer to that is no. And I guess that comes from those formal international standards that for which you can be you can receive accredited certifications to, you know, the 27,001s, the 9,001s, the ISO management system types, where there is a very formal process, which, by the way, in theory is the same all around the world, where an organization that follows specific standards, accrediting people, and those of you involved in that may have heard of UCAS, the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, which ensures that all the people doing accredited certifications follow the correct standard, and that requires mandatory 3-year audits with reviews every 6 months, and that's all required by the process. This standard is not part of that process. You in fact cannot get and accredited certification for BS 10008. But of course, lots of us can help you go through it, and obviously can help you check as an independent person that you're doing it properly. So if you like, it's an informal certification, not a formal accredited certification. So I've seen clients where they do it once only and they do everything else themselves over the years. I have other clients that ask for an annual review of where they're going. It depends upon what they're doing and what is the value of certification to them.
I think there's an element for me around, you can't, it's not just something that you can put in and leave it. Like, you can't just certify yourself, go, right, okay, everything's done, fabulous, let's carry on. And just continue scanning and destroying. You do need to have an element of audit that goes on, and perhaps it's good for someone from external, like, to kind of come in and do that audit, just to ensure that you are keeping up, because people get sloppy with the way they're doing stuff. It's like anything.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And I would also, by the way, say to those people that responded too difficult, okay, I know I've been involved with it for 25 years, but in truth, you're probably doing it anyway. So isn't it a good idea to have a little read through the standard? Because it may say, oh, didn't think of that. Perhaps I should do something about that. You're probably doing it anyway. I don't believe it's too difficult. I guess it really depends upon what is the value of doing it. And when you're talking about scanning, the value is, oh, we don't have to keep the paper. If you're talking about just general electronic information and storing of that, can you put a value on trustworthiness in that area? Difficult.
I work through with clients around the risk assessments of documents as to what's going to end up in court and what won't.
Yeah.
And what needs to be done through a full process, and what can just be scanned off the cuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, any more questions, anyone? I can just sit here and ask Alan questions forevermore, but you know, I've been doing this for the last 15 years.
2005 we first met. I looked it up.
Oh man!
Yes, you were an innocent teenager.
Oh my god! That's more than 15 years then. Yeah. Okay. It does appear that everyone's gone quiet, and so we shall bring it to a close. Thank you so much for your time, Alan. I really do appreciate it. If anyone has any feedback or comments to put in the chat, that would be great. Alan's details are on the screen to get in contact with him. And yeah, pretty much that's where we're going. So thanks very much, everyone. And if you're joining me tonight, 6:30, I shall see you then. But otherwise, I will let Iram know that I didn't kill off her group and that everyone still lives. So thanks very much, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you for the North. Bye.
Bye.